Hi everyone, it's Fred again from Notes of a Nomad, video number 313. Today's a sad topic. It's regarding the mass shooting in a school in northeastern British Columbia in the town of Tumbler Ridge. Tumbler Ridge is a small community, about 2,400 people in northeastern British Columbia. It's about 1,060 plus minus kilometers from Victoria, where I live in the southwestern part of the province. To get there by road would take probably 18 hours to get to Tumbler Ridge, just to give you the perspective on how far it is. The whole country of Canada has been mourning from 7,500 kilometers away in Newfoundland, from the northern part of Canada in the Arctic down to the southern part. Part of that, I'd say, you would say, well, how can that happen? Particularly because of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They can put on and did have programs right across Canada where people could phone in and talk on how they've been impacted. And people have been impacted. Families have been talking to their children. What happened in Tumbler Ridge was an 18-year-old youth who had been suffering from mental health issues for a few years shot her mother and her half brother, who was 11 years old, and then proceeded to go to the high school in Tumbler Ridge and shot six young, well, five other young people and a teacher's assistant. The five young people were, I believe, three girls, 12 years old, and two boys, one 12 and one 13 years old. There's also a young girl in critical condition in the hospital in Vancouver who's been shot, and her everybody has prayers for her, but she's in serious condition, having been shot in the head and also in the neck. So there's hope for her, but who knows? We can just pray and hope. So that's the condition. But what I wanted to talk about was really decency and civility and dignity, how this has been handled. I mentioned the media. They only spoke about crucial facts. There was no panels discussing this, and no political panels. And this is a small community, and the reporters went up there and they kept their distance, and they were handled with restraint and dignity. So this was very well handled, I believe, by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, including opening up the airways from coast to coast to coast. People were phoning in and giving their thoughts and assistance and, their mourning as well. The other thing that was handled well was the police. The police didn't just, give half formatted details. They waited till they had the facts and released the facts as carefully and as cautiously as possible. They said what they knew, not what they conjectured. They were had a lot of compassion and they handled it very with sort of steadiness. So the police handled it very well. And last but not least, the politicians. There was no political issues here. In fact, there was a vigil held a few days later at the City Hall of Tumbler Ridge, and Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, with his airplane, flew from Ottawa with five leaders of the five main political parties, all on the airplane with him. And during the vigil, when the First Nations people were saying prayers and people were holding hands, you saw the political leaders, Mark Carney, and the opposition leader holding hands. This was the example of the decency and dignity. There was no political parties that day. They were all family members as far as they're concerned, fathers and mothers. And that's what they came as, and that's how they spoke as. So the police handle it well, the media handle it well, and of course, the politicians handle it very well. So what I've seen, the way Canada's handled this, is Canada is mourning together and we're going to grow together and help solve these issues from the mental health, from young people, and so to prevent such things happening. This doesn't happen very often in Canada. I think the previous one could have been as many as 10 years ago when there was a mass shooting in a school. But this is the second worst mass shooting in a school in Canada's history. So the country is mourning and we're growing together and it's being handled with decency, dignity, and civility. So with that, I'll say adios, au revoir to you, your family and friends. Lots of love. And until next time, bye for now from Fred and Notes of a Nomad.